All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Let's do this. I'm excited, guys. It's been we didn't have a show yesterday because I was traveling. Let's make sure everything's up and at 'em here. All right, Rockfin, you are awake. Twitter, you are awake. YouTube, where are you? Ooh, Rockfin beat the YouTube. Rockfin beat the YouTube. Rockfin beat YouTube today, folks. I like it when that happens because I'm not a fan of YouTube. I like the people here watching on YouTube, but YouTube itself, you know how that goes. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, happy Tuesday. We didn't have a show yesterday because I was traveling with Graham Elwood back from San Francisco and Sacramento, which, by the way, shout out to everybody who came to those shows. It was a lot of fun, and I'll announce real quick, Los Angeles, we got a show tomorrow at Flappers Comedy Club. Probably going to be the last live show for a long time. So if you're in Los Angeles, grab those tickets, romplacone.com. Shout out to our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left curates all the streamers and content creators you know and love. They update it twice a week. They compile a nice list for you. You can get all your news in a one-stop shop. To find out everything they got going on is to subscribe to their Discord. Check out independentleft.media. All right, my guest today. Been wanting to talk to this guy for a while. And I don't want to speak for him, but I think I identify as a General Strike stan, S-T-A-N, and he might too. We'll find out for sure. We'll ask him directly. But I love the way this guy breaks it down. So today's episode is really going to be focused a lot on General Strike. He is the co-founder of the Fred Hampton Leftists, who y'all know I'm also a very big fan of. So please welcome to the show for the first time, and this should have happened sooner, but I'm glad it's happening now, Compton Jay. Jay, what's up, buddy? Uh-oh, you're muted. What happened to your volume?
I'm so sorry about that.
Now we got you. What's up,
pal? All right, so now I'm here. So thank you, Ron, for having me on. As you say, a long time since for me to be on here. I've been waiting. I've seen every other Fred Hampton Leftist on here, so I'm very happy to be here, Ron.
Yeah, good to have you. And yeah, man, and I've said this before to Nick, you guys over at the Fred Hampton Leftist, there's so much stuff on YouTube that is just so frustrating to watch. And I think that you guys are kind of showing what the potential really is, what it really means to have, like a collective of content creators and the different things you all bring to the table, what Rome brings, what you bring, what Nick brings, and then Sabby and Meg, and RJ. I really love what y'all are doing. I just think it's so great what y'all are doing.
Yeah, it has, quite frankly, taken off. Sort of feels like overnight. It's so surreal to believe that we really just launched in April 1st, and we had a plan to attack the algorithm, attack the feeds, would just pummel it with lots of content. And that was our approach on Twitter. That kind of blew our Twitter up, and then that was the same approach to our content on YouTube, and then expanded it on Rockfin and everything. So it's very exciting. And when Nick and Rome and I were kind of discussing all of this, you always say, yeah, it's going to be big, but I don't know if we really felt it at that time. And I'm not saying that we're as big as we're going to get, but when you feel people are understanding or at least relating to your content, especially when your content is coming from a genuine place, it gives you a good feeling that, hey, this could really be something special. So
totally. And at the end of the day, the thing I love the most, you guys don't just talk, you do. And we're going to get into all those details very shortly. But first, Jay, I do have one headline for us. I usually pick like two or so, but because I really want this to be such a General Strike-centric episode, I picked one that I think dovetails nicely into General Strike. So let's go here first real quick. Out in Norway, we got a little bit of good news. In Norway, a left-wing opposition. Oh, wait, let me go back. I just I just went out of where I wanted to be. That's great. All right, here we go. We're back. Norway's left wing opposition wins election in landslide. So Labour is expected to form a coalition with other left leaning parties as it seeks to reduce inequality and get the economy off of oil. So Norway's left wing opposition, headed by Labour Party Liber Jonas Jahr Store, has won a landslide win in a general election. And they're going to try to form coalition with left leaning parties to reduce inequality and get the country off of big oil. They're a huge oil producer. So this is some good news. Now, I tweeted about this as a couple folks in Norway did say, Ron, it's not quite as rosy as the media is painting out to be. We're not out of the woods yet. And I'm sure that is 100% true. But what's interesting here is that, first of all, this is a little more than just like, hey, we're going to not ban fracking and we're going to maybe get off gasoline-powered cars by 2050, maybe, sort of. I don't know, shrug. This is a lot better than that, I think it's fair to say. And also, and we're going to get into this to dovetail into general strike, in places like Norway, I'm not saying their electoral systems are perfect, nowhere is, but coalitions are at least possible. Jay, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I mean, even if it's there is some caveats to what the story is about, but ultimately what the story is saying is that left wing or left leaning politics, left thinking can win and will win in a landslide, and as the story kind of depicts. And I think we see that in spurts here and there in the United States, like in certain districts, you'll see like a landslide victory by somebody who's unknown. I guess you can say Cori Bush can kind of fall into that sort of category. And considering that with all the corporate money that's stacked up against these sort of candidates, I think that is something great. I think it's a great accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a step in a much better direction. And the reason I wanted to dovetail this into general strike, in places like Norway, they have to listen to the socialists. They have to listen to the communists. They have to listen. And again, keep this in mind too, folks, as I think everyone can attest here. The center in Norway is far to the left of anything we have electorally in the United States. And that's not necessarily reflective of the people who live in the United States, but it's because our electoral system is set up in a way where those types of coalitions aren't even possible. It's not even so much that it's like it's not necessary for one of the Wall Street approved parties to win. It's just not even a possibility. And the duopoly really likes it that way.
Yeah, and I think that they do everything they can to keep it in place. I mean, just this past election, I mean, just news article after news article that I posted, and a lot of us posted on Twitter, where the Democratic Party wins a court battle to get the Green Party removed. This party who claims about voter suppression. So that's just an example of how the duopoly does anything and everything that it can to keep this as a two-party system, because it makes it a lot easier for the corporate powers that be to manage that. Just think if we had 4 parties, 5 parties, it's a little bit harder to get your money's worth, I guess, from their point of view. I think that's an accurate depiction.
Totally, man. Well, even like you look at something like HR1, where there were some good things in that bill. They were things we should have already had, by the way. These are like a lot of the things in that bill. It was almost as basic as, hey, we just decided you shouldn't randomly be allowed to punch 8-year-olds off of swing sets. We randomly decided that's a bad thing. Like, this should have already been a law, but okay, it's a good thing we're doing this now. But then it had these poison pills, as the Green Party accurately described it, these poison pills for third parties.
Right.
And, you had to take it all and just pretend that those poison pills weren't there. Well, why weren't they there? Well, because Democrats and Republicans have this in common. First of all, they have way too much in common in general, but they have this in common. They don't want anything to disrupt the gravy train. And any and all third parties disrupt the freaking gravy train.
Right. I just think it's funny that in a place that, bonds itself to the word freedom and the concept of freedom so much, and democracy, that Americans essentially have 2 choices, maybe one, if you consider them one party because they're paid by the same people. So I just find that very ironic that in a country that pits itself so much on democracy, it doesn't really resemble that. I mean, the Senate is undemocratic. The Supreme Court is undemocratic. The Electoral College is undemocratic. So, I mean, it's really just local politics that's really democratic. So that's what I would have to say about that.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. I mean, I think we both share a very tired attitude towards electoralism in general. And one of the things you hinted at that I feel this way too is that I feel like electoralism, I feel, is a necessary tool. I wish it wasn't, but it is a necessary tool.
Exactly.
And all too often people forget that includes localism. And, local electoralism, it's far from perfect as well. You see a lot of real estate developers and stuff like that just kind of infiltrating all this stuff in every town in the country. But there is more of a chance, and it is better, and you can still accomplish a lot within it. But how I wanted to dovetail this into general strike is when you see these possibilities in other countries that this aren't even possible here, you realize the status quo needs to be broken and completely radically shifted. And the only way to do that is through significant direct action. And I think that's where both of us wind up with general strike. And I want to turn it over to you because I love your pinned tweet, which everyone should check out. Check out at Compton Made Me is Jay's Twitter. His pinned tweet where he breaks down general strike is I love the way you break it down. I love the way you break it down. So if you could give a cliff notes, what does general strike mean to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a general strike means to me is the way I frame succeeding in this political game is to look at what has been successful to gain significant change when it seemed like there was a lot of opposition to that change. And what the history I hearken back to is civil rights and women's rights, where it was direct actions. You're talking sit-ins, marches, protests, economic boycotts, those types of things sustained for several years until the powers that be just simply has to agree to whatever the demands or terms are. So, that's kind of broadly, I guess, how I would describe a general strike. And I feel like at this particular moment in our history, a general strike would be even more successful or have even more of an impact, considering we're just coming out of a pandemic or actually wallowing in a pandemic right now. So the hunger, I feel, is there. The pain is there. It's just we have to figure out how to harness that into a successful movement, whether that be a general strike or we call it something else. But general strike is the way to go. And I feel like it's the answer for everything. If we want to demand money out of politics, general strike. If we want to demand a $25 national minimum wage, general strike. If we want to demand an end to qualified immunity, general strike. So these barriers in our system, these things in our system that seems to be like just locked in, we can't remove that by voting. That is not something that you're going to remove by voting. Now, I never say not to vote, because like you said earlier, voting is a necessary tool. And, there are some candidates that are better than others. I do believe that direct action needs to take a priority, or more of a focus, because it seems like we plan around and talk about electoral politics in voting more than we plan around and talk about direct action. Like it doesn't even have to be huge direct action. How about once a month, we all say we're going to boycott Walmart or Amazon, or you get what I'm saying? Like it's different forms of direct action. And you just keep repeatedly hitting them in the pocketbooks. And I think that will be our way forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, the people really calling the shots in this country are the oligarchs of this country, the Jeff Bezos of the world. They got the politicians in their pocket. They got the judges in their pocket, to quote George Carlin. And so when you really disrupt them and they notice, like, we lost money today, then they go to the puppets they got on a string and they say, hey, you gotta do something about this. What do the people want? They want healthcare. They want living wages. They want an end to the war. It's like, all right, well, we got to start giving some. We got to start giving some. And that's our only way to fight back. I mean, all we could do is just say, we're done. We're done.
And that's what my pin video tweet kind of talks about, is that we have to understand our labor is the only thing that they're interested in. Like they're not interested in our lives. They're not. The pandemic clearly showed Americans that our government is not as interested in our lives, in our way of life, and our quality of life as much as they claim to be. So you can see it now, and I've tweeted out about this several times. You could see it now in our system, in our economic system, where you have 10 million jobs openings right now, and you got over 3 million people have quit their job 3 months in a row. So you got that. So you have sort of a pseudo worker at least awakening to saying, hey, something needs to change here. Now, of course, the pandemic is a factor, but I do believe people, just being home, they're saying, hey, I'm worth more than $7.25 an hour, than $10 an hour. Like, my labor is worth more than that. So with that, you see the reaction of the oligarch, the ruling class. They're like, labor shortage. Like, they see it's a real fear. If they don't get people to come in and work for these low-paying jobs, like, it can really affect their pocketbooks. Now, just imagine that 10 million job openings, the 6 to 9 million people that have quit over the last 3 or 4 months, and you add another 5 million people who go on a strike. We already have really the numbers, because the hardest thing to get people to do on a general strike is to walk off their job, and there's so many job openings and people quitting right now. So I think the time is prime right now for us to tap into that hunger.
Hell yeah, dude. And they gave us the freaking clues. I mean, yeah, during this pandemic, we had the largest upward transfer of wealth. It was a complete scam, the way they just left us out in the cold. And it was other countries around the world were looking at us in terror, like, what the hell are you people doing? But they also told us who the essential workers are. Underline essential. And it's not the fat cats at Wall Street. It's the people keeping your pharmacies open, the people keeping the grocery stores open, the people running the supply chains. Those are the people. And of course, the doctors and nurses. Those are the essential workers. Those are the essential workers. So if the essential workers say, no, we've had enough. We've had enough. We're not going to take this anymore. And hey, I look at my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as a prime example. There's no labor shortage in this country. There's a living wage shortage. Within 1 week, there was this Burger King in one of the city neighborhoods. Everyone just walked out. They were like, we're done. We're walking out. Simultaneously, you know what happened? This ice cream store, legendary ice cream store, been there a long time. They decided, we're starting all wages at $15 an hour, which still isn't enough. It should be higher, but that's a lot more than $7.25. So they said, we're starting at $15 an hour. They got a record number of applicants. Right. There's not a labor shortage in this country. There's
not a labor shortage at all. And Richard Wolff kind of lays this out in a video that I posted not too long ago, but it's a shortage of jobs that pay enough for people to sustain their lives. It's just despicable that we live in a country and the whole idea of American exceptionalism, but it seems to be that we're exceptional at oppressing people, at suppressing wages, at doing all of the bad things. That's what it seems that we are exceptional at. I just can't imagine. Now, I live in California. I think the minimum wage is $14 or $15 already. and that's not at all enough to live on here in California. But just think of the example that you brought up, where basically the wages were doubled at this. I forget the business establishment that you mentioned that started.
Yeah, it was an ice cream place called Clay.
Yeah, they start now at $15. Like this is what I mean. Like they're gonna get the picture. They're gonna get the picture. It's just a matter of, do we have the stomach to do some with some of the employees that you described walking off the job? A lot of people have the stomach to do that?
Well, what is the anatomy of a general strike? What do we need to have in place for a general strike to work?
That's the $1 million question.
I know.
And I'm not going to profess
why I asked you
that I'm an expert, but in response to trying to answer that question, that's when we came up with the General Strike Summit, because there's a lot of people who don't like their job, who believe they're worth more than $7.25, $10, $12 an hour, but they don't see any feasible other options. They just need to hear, this is what a general strike is. This is how we can affect change. How do like people who are on the fence about a general strike, they want to know, how do I pay my bills during a general strike? What if I live in a state that is, very harsh on striking workers? How does that work out? Like people, if in order to create, formulate, build a general strike, you need people. And in order to get people, you have to address the fears, the concerns that they have. You have to do that. And this is what I say to a lot of us, like you and I, Fred Hampton Leftists, a lot of our friends on Twitter, for example, is we're all ready for a general strike right now. Like we could, if I were to tell you, Ron, let's go, you would be ready to go. If you were to tell me, I would be ready to go. The problem is, of the people that's passionate, that's not enough to affect the change that we want.
Right.
So we have to convince the people who are feeling the pain but not hearing the idea of a general strike. We have to talk to those people, answer those questions. And in one of our episodes, I even went as far as to say a general strike, or preparing for it, may be like a campaign where we're going door to door. And it has to be from a place of love. That's very important. I'm going to discuss this later, but it has to be from a place of love, this general strike, just sort of like what the Black Panthers did. And it's, how are you doing in your bills? What needs to be paid? What's going on? Does your kid need tutoring? That sort of help. Now, let's talk about why you're in this economic situation. This is how the government's set up. This is what's happening to you. This is what's happening to all of us. Now, our idea is to hit them in the pocketbooks. And you just basically, you're campaigning. You're just telling people, getting people involved. And the very process of preparing, of trying to build a general strike might be enough to get them to change. Because if they start to see the numbers, wow, this organization is getting big. They're getting donations. People are supporting this. We need to do something before this gets out of control. So there will be some smart capitalists who think like that. And of course, there'll be some that say, no, we're going to fight tooth and nail. And those are the ones that's going to be the cause of why we have a general strike. But again, the General Strike Summit is to answer all of these questions. How do we build a local infrastructure for mutual aid? How do you find people in your local area that's on the, like-minded, who wants to build a mutual aid local infrastructure in your area? How do we communicate outside of these corporate-owned avenues of communications? Like all of these questions we're going to have to talk about and answer. And I felt like it needed to be over several days if we really want to talk about it. It can't just be like an episode or two. It needs to be and it's tons of guests. I hope I think the target we want to have is something like 100 guests or 100 people who are participating. I'm not going to say guests, that are participating, for example, like yourself, like you come on and you contribute to the conversation, or if you have something, an idea or a topic that you want to bring up, we'll create a panel and kind of dedicate a couple of hours on a Saturday or Sunday or Friday or whenever you're available. let's discuss it. And from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of that 3-day live stream event, we will be just discussing everything general strike and answering questions.
So when does that? Let's talk about the summit a little bit. Like when does it take place? And
great question. So we decided to go with November 12th, 13th, and 14th. Sorry, we changed the date a little bit. That's why I have to remember. But 12th, 13th, and 14th, that's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And the reason we picked those days is that, we're trying to reach the working class. So a lot of them may work during the week and be off on the weekends, or some of them may work on the weekends and be off during the week. So we kind of wanted to get a weekday and get some time on the weekends, just so that we can reach as many working class people and regular Americans as possible. So November 12th through the 14th is the General Strike Summit.
So when we say general strike and we say mutual aid, like what is? Well, let's start with mutual aid. Like when you say mutual aid, like what does that mean to you? How is something like that implemented?
So I forget who I heard this on, but I explain it like this. Maybe it was Nick. So I'm going to compare it, mutual aid, to charity. Charity is vertical, where somebody who has a lot, you're contributing to somebody economically way down the ladder than you are. That's what charity. Mutual aid is horizontal. It's all of us in the community contributing to aid, and that could be, food. It could be funds to pay rent. It could be raising money. Hey, I have a surgery coming up and I can't, my deductible is $5,000. That community coming together to help raise funds for that, for that. So mutual aid is the community sort of contributing to the pot so that everybody can take advantage and everybody can be taken care of. So that's sort of how I describe mutual aid. Is the exchange of aid horizontally, and charity is exchange of aid vertically. So that's how I explain it.
I love it. I mean, I love that. And I think that, I mean, let me know if you agree with this. I feel like that term, just mutual aid, there are more people who resonate with that now than maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
And me myself, 3 years ago, I had no idea what mutual aid was, Ron. That was a term I did not come across in my daily life, so I didn't know.
Me too. I mean, yeah, me too. I mean, I had heard the term, but I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, I would have just thought like, oh, that's just people building, just alternative systems outside of what exists, which to an extent it is a lot of that, and that's great. But we're seeing more and more how necessary that just is in every polis, because, I mean, over the next couple years, no matter what, our supply chain is going to be kind of whack, and it could get a lot worse. And our government's made it clear we're on our frickin' own. They've taken every wrong turn, and it's been out of apathy. It's been out of just rugged neoliberal brutality. So we're all we got.
These decisions that they're making, it's just marching all of us closer to a general strike and to a successful general strike. Like, this is not sustainable. People living like this, living in these conditions, their government treating them this way, or the lack of treatment from their government, it's not sustainable. Like, eventually enough people will say, yeah, like we're done. Like this is it. It's time for this system, this government to be turned around. And I think what happened to George Floyd, we kind of saw what something like that, a huge movement can do. I mean, that was worldwide reaction. And at that time, if you remember, politicians, at least they were playing the role of acting like they were really going to do something, which was, a different story from what in the past. Now, they didn't do anything, but I'm saying all of what was happening at least got them to act or pretend as if they were going to do something. And in this case, in that city, the city council where George Floyd was killed, they even voted to, I believe, to dismantle the police department there. And now it subsequently has changed, but I'm just saying movements and the number of people can bring about change a lot quicker than, let's say, voting by comparison.
Well, absolutely. And another thing that, and while it was frustrating that we didn't, we're still waiting on the type of change that we do need. And it's how much longer can we wait? But the one other side of that is encouraging, more people now know what it means when you say defund the police.
Yes.
More people know what that means now.
Yes, and just to your point, it's sort of the same thing with mutual aid, and that's what gives me hope in a failing empire that's literally crumbling around you. That's what gives me hope, is that, yeah, the general strike is not moving as quickly as I want. Change is not moving as quickly as I want, but people are learning. People are saying, yeah, this just doesn't. It's more and more people that are waking up to a lot of the corruption, and a lot of us who are passionate and ready to go need to understand, before you can start a general strike, there does have to be education. There does have to be an education of a sort, or planning, and I think that's sort of also what the General Strike Summit does. Like, can we really believe that we're going to plan a general strike without talking about just having a broad conversation first, to come up with ideas, to come up with strategies, to get union participation, which is very key, to come up with strategies to build mutual aid infrastructures? Like, these things take time. Now, absent a what's the right word? A general strike that comes from a natural event like the George Floyd. Like, if something like that, and people just go and we strike, and it just starts and it just keeps going. Outside of a general strike like that, it has to be planned. It has to be discussed. Right. It has to be educated. Outside of something like that, it just sparked purely off of emotion, off of an event as terrifying or as terrible as the George Floyd murder. It has to be this way, where we're talking about planning, where we're talking about concerns, or we're talking about plans to address concerns. That is what has to come first before any successful general strike, in my opinion.
So, we're talking about planning. Let's go into, the other part, and I know this is part of the summit as well. What are our demands?
That's key. Now, that's key for a lot of people. For some people who are going to want to participate, the demands is what may draw a lot of people's participation. So, what I could say as far as demands is some of the general things, because there are general things that everybody kind of agree on. A general strike, we're talking economics, we're talking about getting paid more. So, of course, we're talking about a significant increase in pay. That will be one of the basic demands. Now, as far as getting into more detailed demands, I believe that those demands have to come from the people involved. So, for example, I don't think that it's a good strategy to come up with the demands and then say, hey, guys, these are the demands we're doing with our general strike. You want to join us? I think we have to get people and say, hey, this is our condition that we're all in. We're not getting paid much. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're seeing this corruption in government. We're seeing all this stuff. Now, what do like from that place? Like, what do we do from here? So I kind of lost my point, but the point that I did want to make about the General Strike Summit before I pass it back to you is it's gonna take a Herculean effort for a general strike to be pulled off. So that is something I feel like some of us who are passionate is overlooking. Like, it's more than just, hey, let's all jump in the streets. It's more to it than that. We have to be more strategic than that. We want to maximize our economic impact. So yeah, I'm a person who has to plan, strategize, then execute. Plan. So that's kind of how my thinking is. But yeah, that's the way I should think it should be approached.
Well, and it's gotta be. I mean, yeah, like, and I'm very enthusiastic about a general strike too. And I tweet it and I tweet it and I tweet it. But I realize I'm like, look, I'm not calling for just a fun day where we're all gonna be like this is a very, very tall glass of water.
Right.
But you know what's a way taller glass of water is not trying.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's for those naysayers that are, I'm not telling you the ones that are on the fence. I'm talking about for those that are saying general strike is a dumb idea. It's like, what is the alternative?
What's your better idea?
Yeah. What is the alternative to vote in more? Like, what is, like, people need assistance now. You get what I'm saying? We can't say, well, 2024, this election, well, in between 2024, what do people do for food? What do people do for healthcare before that happens? That's the part that we do need to bridge. We do need to bridge that gap. Now, there is going to be planning, but we do need to understand that people are going to be suffering while we're planning. People are still suffering now. But that's the part where I mentioned earlier, it needs to come from a place of love. We were talking about this on one of our podcasts. I think it's Conversation with the Leftists, and one of the panelists brought up how the Black Panthers don't get enough credit for the mutual aid. Like, they're the ones that sparked the whole free lunch program in our public school systems. Like, they were paying off parking tickets. They were hiring good lawyers to defend people. They were doing so much great work in the community, and I think they need to be the example. And that's the place of love I'm talking about. So we need to go into these communities and saying, these communities that are struggling, you're struggling with bills. Let us help you. Let us build a mutual aid. This community, your neighbor needs help with this. You need help with that. Let's see a way of trying to help each other. Like, that's how we have to come, because that's how we're going to get their ear. And then we talk about, why are you in this situation? Oh, my job, it pays me this. Yes. This is why we're talking about a general strike. This is what a general strike is. We're trying to get these things from a general strike. And that's how we're going to build the masses for this general strike.
Mm-hmm. I think that is so essential, because the one thing that I think we all want to avoid, and the one thing that I've found myself being, up against sometimes, you don't want to give the impression that when we call for a general strike, we're basically putting it on the shoulders of the people working the hardest. That's like the opposite of what a general strike is all about. It's the opposite of what a general strike is trying to accomplish. It's the opposite of the work involved with the general strike. But with shitty messaging, people might get the wrong impression. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't want people to be like, we know there's a problem in this country, and we know that you're the backbone of this country. So now go on strike and put everything on the line for the rest of us. We'll text you when you're done. That's not what a general strike is. It's the opposite of all that.
And that's what the education, sorry to cut you off, but that's what the education is that I speak of, is that Ron, I really believe that there's a great number, and I was going to go on to say millions of Americans, that if they understood the strategies of a general strike, they will be wholeheartedly on board. The problem is they got a lot of propaganda being thrown at them. But if we do that sort of campaigning style, that knock on a million doors sort of style across the country, that's going to be the way we build this coalition. Now, another point I want to make about this is that, 2021, and then we have an election coming up in 2024. Just think, over the next couple of years, so we're going to have this general strike summit. Maybe we do 2 or 3 of them until we feel, okay, now we've sort of answered all the questions. Now let's go into into some of the planning. We're planning. So this is what I mean strategically. When will be over the next 10 years, 5 years? When will be the best time? I'm asking this to myself to have a general strike. I would say right before a presidential election. That's when the parties are paying the most attention. So we're in 2021. So we effectively have 2.5 years. If you're talking about beginning in the campaigning, maybe 2 years to talk about how can we build a general strike, and then to campaign to get those people on board.
I really like that, because then what else you do? You set the standard, not you as you need to.
Right.
That's way too much weight to put on one person. But the general strike sets the bar for the conversation, because if you have a mass amount of people involved with this thing, it cannot be ignored. That means for the first time in my frickin' lifetime, in your frickin' lifetime, instead of these bullshit questions like, what's your favorite Bible verse? Or hey, here's a planned question from a planted audience member that's a frickin' softball for you. First, they're going to compliment your hair and your smile. We're going to get questions because they won't have a choice. They'll have to ask, how are you going to handle this general strike?
Exactly.
So whatever blank suits up there, and it'll be 2 blank suits. That's a fucking promise. But those blank suits, they got to give something. They don't have a freaking choice, and they're going to be scared. And I'm sorry,
that's what you described is exactly the pressure point that I'm sort of describing when I'm saying, if we were to kind of strategically, start planning this out or working towards the election cycle, like, they would have to address it. And this is what I mean. Like, we may not even have to actually execute it. Just when they're starting to hearing the planning and how we're campaigning, and it's just people are getting on board and they're doing polling, and it's like, yeah, there's 60% approval rating for a general strike. Those are the types of things, the waves that could bring about change even before any sort of execution of it is done. But it takes work. It's going to take that sort of door knocking campaign. Listen, if Bernie Sanders can raise money and do the things he did during his campaign on the backs of that's working class people. Yeah. Not rich people. Working class people can come together economically. Like, maybe they can't contribute whatever the max is, but they can contribute $3. They can contribute $3 a month. And if a bunch of working class people do that, let's say we have some sort of general strike fund, just think of the possibilities. But it's all has to come from a place of love. It has to come from a place of, we're trying to help you live a better life.
And when you put it in that perspective, it becomes a little more palatable, and it's a little easier to have optimism for the future, because the thing Bernie did that I will always be grateful for, and it was just a matter of, dude was in the right place at the right time, at the right moment. He showed all of us being lefties in the United States, which in many ways I describe being a lefty in the United States. It's like being a surfer in Nebraska, and the only way to get to the ocean is by walking. And in many ways, that is the case.
Yes.
But what happened in 2016, I found out for the first time in my life, and I'm willing to guess that you found out for the first time in your lifetime too. We're not as alone as we thought we were. There's other people who want to go on this freaking walk with us. And maybe, just maybe, we could at least build a freaking bicycle. Just maybe, and maybe even a car, maybe even an electric car that gets really good mileage that's going to take us all the way to the coast. Let's aim big.
Yeah. So we have to wake up the power of the American people, and this is the analogy I give about the American people. It's like an elephant at a circus that's tied up. It's a baby elephant. It can't break the rope. And over time, over years and years, it grows to tons. But it's given up on trying to break the rope. He or she doesn't understand this elephant. It can just snap it like that because it has the power. But it doesn't understand because it's been conditioned to think it doesn't have the power. And that's the American people. We have to wake them up to say, this is so easy to do. It's just collective power. They have to respond to us. If 2 million people show up in Washington, D.C., demanding something, what do you think the government is going to do? So it's all about that. And the government and the system is all about making us feel that we don't have power, because the other side, we always have all these enemies. They're over there, this and that. The other person who also needs help happens to be my enemy. That seems to be a little weird to me. He seems like we have a lot more in common than the few things you're telling me that we don't have in common. And that's what the duopoly is afraid of. And that's what we have to do with our campaigning for this general strike.
Absolutely, man. And I love that shackled elephant analogy. It's so beautiful in so many ways, especially since those shackled elephants are surrounded by a bunch of bullshit. Literally, yes. Americans are surrounded by a bunch of bullshit constantly. So it really works. And you have, I think whenever people are, like just divided on so many different things, and it's like as simple as when you look at electoralism, I think for every conversation where people are just jerking each other off about the pretzel logic they're twisting themselves into to have the conversation of who the lesser evil is, where the lesser evil is. The conversation shouldn't be who the lesser evil is. The conversation should be these Wall Street approved duopoly parties aren't different enough. And a ping pong volley between neoliberalism and neo-fascism, which is literally what we have. The GOP is literally a neo-fascist platform. That's what it is. That's not a good volley to be in. And we got to break that frickin' volley. So for every lesser of evil conversation, the conversation should instead be, these two groups aren't different enough. What do we have to do to change that?
Exactly. And why is the question never, how do we not have another lesser of two evil election? Why does mainstream media, why don't these corporate parties, why don't they attack it that way? Like that before the election gets here, so that we don't have two, dipshits, why don't we plan ahead? You know what I mean? And let's get some good candidates. It's because that's not what they want to do. And the thing is, in such a corrupt, terrible system, would a really good person really be elected? Can they really be elected? And if elected, there's so many stops, there's so many locked doors to opportunities for that president to really do anything good, or president, or anyone. It doesn't have to be the president. I'm just saying there's so many barriers. One, to get the good person there, because the good person, or the person who would be best, may not be a millionaire or billionaire. So that's one of the biggest things about this duopoly, about this system, is that the only people who are running are these corporate, you have to have literally almost $1 billion to run for president. And that is just so restrictive. That eliminates so many good people that would do so much of a better job at all of these in Congress than the people we have right now. So yeah.
Well, and this goes into, the thing that we see on Twitter every freaking day about be nice to the squad. They're the only people on our side. It's just like, why do you like living on your knees? Why do you freaking like that? Why do you want to do that? You know what I want to be? You know what I want to be to the squad? I want to be their excuse. That's what I want to be. And what I mean by that is that they have to go to Mama Bear and they have to say, hey, Mama Bear, you see those people out there? Those are the people who got me elected. And their support for me ain't unconditional. They're pissed that we're not using the power that we do have to vote as a block, that we're not, trying to push harder for anything. They're pissed about it. And they ain't going to support me next time. And they might replace me with someone else. And that someone else might be less willing to play ball with you. So you either need to concede some to us, or we're out of here. And the next person might not call you Mama Bear, might not be willing to participate with you at all. I understand that some people in the electoral realm, they need to play ball with truly despicable people that I myself could never play ball with in a billion years. I understand the necessity of that to get some policy passed. But play frickin' hardball. And I'm willing to be the excuse. I'm willing to be your frickin' excuse. But you ain't going to be their excuse if you just worship them no matter what they do. Because playing the easy road, going down easy street, guarantees you a nice salary for the rest of your frickin' life.
Right. It's funny you bring that up. Sort of what we're just talking about, I guess, here is the inside game that some people want to have for the Democratic Party, where basically, you elect enough progressives or left-leaning people in order to take control of the Democratic Party. Now, all this time I've been saying, I don't want the inside game. I think it's terrible. But Nick had Brianna Joy Gray on, and she did articulate a point to Nick, and I think it was very good. And that's that it didn't sound, when Nick described it, it didn't sound like he was describing he's against the inside game. He's describing he's against the inside game that's being played right now.
Yes.
That's what I'm against.
Yes.
So if we had, I'm all for if you want to run as a Democrat, but if you're coming in like, sort of like the Tea Party, where you're saying, okay, these 10 candidates are running in different districts, but we're running together. Like we're pooling our money or whatever the case may be. We're running together and we're going to Washington, D.C., running as Democrats to disrupt all of this corporate corruption, to disrupt all, you know what I mean? You're going in saying that I'm going in to do this. I'm going in to do that. And you actually do. And that's the inside game that I'm for. And I always say this, and you always hear the same sort of response when I say I'm for this sort of Tea Party strategy. It's the response, Tea Party was funded by corporations, but that's not the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is they all were Republicans, but they hated their Republican leader, and that leader hated them because they voted as a block, and they said, I'm not doing it at all. I don't care what happens. If the country shuts down, shut it down. And they got what they want. They even got their Tea Party candidate in the White House called Donald Trump. It's about power. You can't gain power by playing nice. You know what I'm saying? Like people in power aren't going to go, oh, you asked nicely. Well, here you go. Like that's not going to happen. You got to figuratively punch them in the mouth and just take it. You get what I'm saying? Like that's
I think that is so beautifully put. I think that is so beautifully put. Like it's like I'm not against an inside game. I understand that is necessary. Right. I'm not going to be the one to do it, but I'll vote for the people who I hope are going to do it. I'm against the way the inside game is being played now because it's not. I mean, honestly, I would say it's not being played. Right. The inside game's not being played.
Yeah, what is the end game in your inside game strategy? Like, and what I see, if they're saying this is a strategy, I see that they see this as a long-term 30 years. And at the end of AOC's career, maybe she'll have Medicare for all. Maybe that's the strategy. But the thing is, there's too many people that can't wait 20, 30 years for that to happen. Like we need to press now. So I believe that if you're not pressing your politician, whether you like him or not, you're not doing your job as a constituent. Absolutely. It's not your job as a constituent to praise a politician. This whole idea that a politician, this whole celebritizing, if that's a word, I think I just made that up, celebritizing of politicians, it's so bizarre to me. Like,
it's bizarre to a lot of the world.
Right. Like
it's weird to a lot of the freaking world.
Why do you have to praise somebody? When you go to McDonald's, why don't you praise that worker that's getting paid a lot less? Why don't you do that? How about when you get your car washed by those immigrants, especially in California, why don't you give them a $10 tip? That's really going to help them because they're not getting paid a lot of money. You get what I'm saying? So
Oh,
I just think
absolutely.
that there's more to it. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I completely, yeah. I mean, and it is bizarre to a lot of other places, the celebrity worship of politicians we have. It is bizarre. I mean, even just like, and I'm not trying to disrespect the dead at all, but
Right.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it is very strange. The fact that we have people like, I mean, I have personal friends in my life who dressed up as Ruth Bader Ginsburg for Halloween. I'm sorry,
Sorry.
it's bizarre, and people mean well. This is just what they
Yeah.
know. But you take a step back and you're like, this is very strange. It's very strange, first of all, that a court has been utilized as a political football for years and
Right.
years and years, and nobody's taking a step back and being like, this is really messed up and needs to end. But it's very bizarre that like this person is just lionized for
Yeah.
being reasonable in comparison, and then politicians. It's in France, they pummel their politicians' houses with shit when they're mad.
Yes.
Literal shit.
I like that. I like that
I like
strategy.
it too.
That's really direct action right there. I like that strategy. And we have to take a note. I think France is one of the better countries at protest and movement that we need to look and take note from. I like France. I like Brazil. I like Cuba. I like, just like take
Germany.
note. Yeah,
I mean,
Germany
the
is
list
another
goes on
one.
and on.
Like we see, and I think this also illustrates a bigger point that internationally workers are saying, you know what, something is just not right. Internationally, workers are waking up. And Nick on the Fred Hampton Leftists, he does a lot of international roundtables to try to create this solidarity internationally,
Yes,
because
yes.
somebody oppressed anywhere on the planet means that we have a fight that's not over anywhere in the planet. Does not just on this soil. If you call yourself an humanitarian and you free everybody in the United States, that doesn't mean your job is over. Like, you have other countries to assist, to fight for. And so yeah, I'll keep
and that's
on.
no, I mean, that's just that's another one of the reasons why I really appreciate what you guys are doing. I mean, you hit on all these cylinders, and it is just such a cool thing to see.
Yes.
So where can everybody go to learn more? And again, kind of give like a rundown here. The General Strike Summit, the Fred Hampton Leftists. Tell people where they can go.
Absolutely. As far as where you can find us on YouTube, just search Fred Hampton Leftist. It'll pop. First search will pop up. It'll be us. Check out our content. Always, support us there. On Twitter, you can follow us, Fred Hampton Left, just Fred Hampton Left. And then on Instagram and TikTok, Fred Hampton Leftist. We're going to be doing a lot more on the Fred Hampton Leftist platform. I'm sorry. We're also on Rockfin. Check us out on Rockfin. Also, I forgot, that's because it's new. Our newly launched on Rockfin not too long ago. So that's where you can find us. You can find me on Twitter at Compton Made Me. Also have the Populist Voice, where I do a lot of the same sort of work, and I'm trying to bring more voices, just more people to be able to the conversation, to give their input on it. And that's what I'm doing. With the Populist Voice, just Google that, the Populist Voice. Now, the General Strike Summit, November 12th through the 14th, it'll be 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. each of the 3 days. Everything General Strike, talking about any of your concerns for those who are on the fence.
What's the time zone on that, real quick? Sorry.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. 10 a.m. Eastern till 10 p.m. Eastern. So those are Eastern times. Thank you for that, Ron. We're still building out the details about the General Strike Summit. We're still scheduling guests. So, we're not going to release like the schedule yet, because we're still building that schedule out. But we're hoping to have, people like yourself. We're going to invite, Brianna, like a lot of the people, friends of the show that have come on to the Fred Hampton Leftists, Brianna, Lee Camp, Franco, Fiorello, Nico, Jimmy Dore, Cornell West. We're inviting lots and lots of people to participate in this General Strike Summit. We're working maybe on a website. We got an FHL or a Fred Hampton Leftist meeting. So once we have that meeting, we'll be able to, sort of give a little more detail about what's going to be happening with that General Strike. So I know that was a lot, but that's all of it in a nutshell. How to contact us and the general strike that's coming up.
Well, thank you so much for everything you do, and thanks for joining me today, man. It's awesome to talk to you about this, and I'm really looking forward to the summit. Thanks for
Thanks for
including me.
having me, Ron. Thanks.
Cheers, buddy. Be well.
Bye.
All right. Are you excited? I'm excited. General strike. Let me do the chat real quick before we dismount today. Red Pill, what's up? How are you? I hope you are doing well. Medicare for all, UBI, legal pot, free college, and U.S. wars. I am with you, absolutely. And free pot, why not? Let's go for the gusto. Crone of Anarchy over on the Rockfin. How are you? I hope you are well. Crone of Anarchy, you say we need to know what the police are up to. I'm with you. I'm with you. And unfortunately, I'm pretty sure we're not going to like what we hear. We do need to know what the police are up to. And we're not going to like what we hear 100% of the time. They're like, oh, what are they doing? Using facial recognition software to try to find information on an ex? Great. That's cool. Among other terrible things. Great. Awesome. Anyway, thank you for that. Thank you, Red Pill. And thank you very much, Crowd of Anarchy. You all help keep this show on the air. Guys, we will be back probably tomorrow. Yeah, likely tomorrow. It's a weird week because I was traveling some this week, which again, shout out to everyone who was at the shows this weekend in San Francisco and Sacramento. We had a good time. It was really awesome. I'll do some more thank yous. By the way, Left It Wall, still working on that. The GoFundMe is up. I will do some thank yous on the movie tomorrow. And in the meantime, you all know the drill. Lucy, she says meow. And I say peace. Oh, Los Angeles, tomorrow. Tickets, ronplacone.com. Don't wait. Probably going to be the last live show for a while. ronplacone.com. I love you all. Peace, love, and a general strike.